We'll be watching several other races. You can follow the progress. And Dr. Blass, as you know, we're a society fascinated by the idea of a superbug or virus. It's right in the district of the bill's sponsor. They say it does not represent their values. We'd heard rumors about unprecedented teacher vacancies around the state. And for the first time, 12 News dug into pages and pages of school job openings. And it's a bleak picture. The issue of convicted felons being given what are essentially the keys to the kingdom of these hotels is something we've been investigating for 2 years. And now for the first time, we're seeing lawmakers trying to do something about it. We went to those who would appear to be making the most money off of this scheme, the home builders, to ask them what they're doing to control it. Mark, this is a big shakeup at the Phoenix VA, at least temporarily, while this investigation takes place. You're talking about the person at the top. Now, public officials raised questions about conflict of interest and national security. Now, a new investigation suggests there is a problem. You've lived here and grown up here. Do you think this community is ready for the World Cup and then the Olympics?
Well, we still have a lot of things to do.
Environmental officials acknowledged that at their current pace, it'll take another decade to significantly reduce pollution in Guanabara Bay. The absence of U.S. paraphernalia here got us wondering, how much street cred does the American team have in a soccer community like this with such intelligent fans? It is game night in Rio de Janeiro. One of the local teams, Fluminense, taking on the team from the north, Sao Paulo. And talk about making an impact. If you're an adult out there, think about the last time you heard from your elementary school teacher. Well, Jim Foley regularly kept in touch with students even until a couple of years ago when he met with several of them before taking his last trip to Syria. And some would say a threat is a threat. Whether the person posing that threat is mentally ill or not, a police officer has the right to defend himself. What's in a name depends on who you talk with, but most people do know which names are offensive. And new tonight, a report released by the McCain Institute for International Leadership at ASU looks at the scourge of human trafficking and forced labor and what the companies that you and I do business with on a daily basis are doing about it. Okay, Daniel, you looked at Fortune 100 companies. These are big box stores, gas companies, tech, on, and whether they're doing enough to prevent forced labor in their supply chains. Were you satisfied or disappointed with what you found?
I'd say that we were pleasantly surprised with this project.
A lot of people who hear that ASU researched America's top 100 companies on their ethics will say, okay, name names. Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? I know you mentioned Disney as sort of standing out as maybe a model citizen here, but you say you don't want to get into the naming business. Why not? The bottom line is 24% of companies with supply chains internationally don't have any kind of policy outlined on forced labor. I mean, these are the biggest companies in the U.S. Isn't there a major ethics crisis here?
So there's two ways to look at this, Paul.
Daniel promised me, when you do name names, you're coming back.
That's a deal.
Unlicensed, untaxed, and unjust. Joe, this practice hurts a lot of people.
It really does, and many argue it takes away jobs, quality jobs. They believe construction employees are being moved off the books by business owners, becoming misclassified employees.
And it puts people like me out of business.
So it's really back to the builders. The home builders need to question who they're hiring, their subcontractors.
When we visited a home construction site recently, we made numerous calls to tile and flooring stores. Would that be okay if I just met up with you, say here where? None have agreed to speak on camera. This week we went to the lobby where an annual home builders conference was held, but when we tried to speak with company executives and employees about the issue of misclassification of employees, we were politely turned down or just ignored. Is it okay if I ask you a question for our news story?
I'd rather not. Thank you, though.
We're talking about misclassification of employees. Is it something you guys have heard about or know about?
You're not going to be here. This is our event.
The president of the Home Builders Association of Central Arizona, Connie Wilhelm, asked us to leave. The association lobbies on behalf of home builders and, according to its website, is the voice of the residential construction industry.
For the first time, the head of a major home builder has agreed to answer our questions.
Well, Stephen Hilton of Meritage Homes has answered our request because he says he believes home builders are acting in good faith.
I'm not aware of any problems with misclassified labor.
Did you know that the ROC has specifically stated independent contractors must have their own license?
I wasn't specifically aware of that particular clause.
And before we go to break, this past week, the killer of a Glendale police officer, Anthony Hawley, was sentenced to death. He made news for clapping loudly, creating a spectacle in court after the sentence was read by the judge. But on a personal note, I hope this is not what people ultimately remember about Officer Anthony Hawley's murder. Instead, that they remember Anthony. In his short 24 years on the earth, he proudly served in the Air Force. He was a big brother, big sister volunteer, and he wore the Glendale police badge, his colleagues say, with absolute honor. Anthony especially cared about brightening the day of kids he came into contact with on the police beat. So before another week begins and another news cycle pushes this story into the past, remember this. You couldn't hear it in the courtroom. You couldn't hear it during the press conferences, but I can tell you there are legions of people, police officers, former peers of Anthony, many who I've had the privilege of meeting in my West Valley neighborhood where Anthony lived, some who volunteered for Anthony's foundation that helps less fortunate children, a charity founded by his gracious mother. Those people, every day of their lives, in their heart, give a standing ovation to Anthony Hawley. And we applaud Officer Hawley for the impact his legacy continues to have. We'll be right back.
Joe Dana from our Phoenix affiliate, KPNX, has the story.
Yeah.
Sometimes in life we draw up blueprints, but fate has other plans.
Wow. I just think I'm going to value things a little bit differently.
That lesson hit home recently for contractor John Murray. You see, while knocking down walls of this 1950s North Phoenix 4-bedroom, John discovered the contents of a partially opened time capsule.
We've done hundreds of houses. I've never seen anything like this.
There was a photo of a family of another era and an open letter written for a future generation.
This time capsule is being buried on September 27th, 1966.
The message penned by a 33-year-old Betty Klug.
The Vietnam War is still going on. Racial situation very serious. Boys have long hair resulting from the beetle craze.
John Bruce. It turns out Betty's husband, Bruce, now 79 years old, lives in Scottsdale. As John presented the contents of the time capsule to Bruce, it was all new to him.
This is what we found, and there's a picture there.
Bruce was unaware his wife left this behind in their old home. Betty followed politics closely.
Barry Goldwater, Republican candidate for president.
And then Bruce realizes the date the letter was written.
On September 27th. Geez, that's my birthday.
The letter would become a delayed birthday gift to Bruce. 10 years after she deposited the time capsule in the walls of their home, Betty died in a car crash.
I don't know how I did it. Went back to work within a week.
For a few moments on this afternoon, this letter would unearth old memories.
That's where we met, in Oak Park.
Each sentence prompting a precious recollection.
And she was so damn smart.
Time capsules provide observations about politics and culture. But Bruce says if there's a message here, it is to value who you love. Because as Bruce will tell you, things don't always go as planned.
We had the best marriage. Not once did we argue about anything.
For NBC News, Joe Dana, Scottsdale, Arizona.